Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at something called relative frequency tables. So if you'll put that label at your top or the top of your page, relative frequency tables. Now, if you'll remember in our last lesson, we talked about two-way tables and we used addition or subtraction to complete those. Well, we're doing the same thing today, except once we complete our table, we're going to find percentages so we can answer our questions with percentages. So I want you to write that word down. So to find your percentages, what we do is we take the part over the whole, part divided by whole, and we multiply it by 100. And you'll see what I mean with that just in a minute. But please write, to find the percent or percentages equals part over whole times 100. And then I'd like for you to pause the video, and for number 1 and number 2, please copy your, let's start with number 1. Copy your table or your two-way table for number 1. Now that you've copied your two-way table, let's add and subtract to complete that. So the first thing I notice is I can subtract to fill in the blank for kids. So I'm going to do 63 minus 22 is 41. And I don't have anything else I can do like for no kids or total, so now I'm going to do columns. Pets, I need the total, so I'm going to say 41 plus 23. And you get 24, oops, or I'm sorry, 64. I still can't fill in the no pets column. I have too many missing pieces. So I'm going to look at the total over here. I have the absolute total, which is 125, and I'm going to subtract 63 to find that missing piece, and that's 62. Now I have something that I can use to help me find the other two pieces. So or the missing parts. So let's look at no kids. I have a total of 62, so I'm going to subtract 23 to put that 39 in there. And remember, I want you to copy this entire table. Just putting numbers doesn't help do anything. And now let's look at the bottom. I can either add 22 plus 39 or subtract 125 minus 64. You'll get the same answer, which is 61. So now let's look at the types of questions you'll see in this lesson. So it says Liz wanted to see if there was an association between people who have kids and people who have pets. There's a two-way table that shows her results. Complete the blank spaces. Well, we just did that. Now let's look at these questions. Look at A. Of the people who were surveyed, what's the relative frequency of people who have pets? So remember earlier I said to find percentages, you do part over whole, and then you multiply by 100. Well, here's what I mean. When it says of the people who were surveyed, that's my whole amount. That's my bottom. So how many were surveyed? 125. Well, what part of those have pets? So if I look, part of my total that has pets is 64. So that's my ratio. That's my fraction. But I want to change that fraction to this word right here, relative frequency. That's fancy talk for what's the percentage of the people who have pets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 64 divided by 125. And then I'm going to multiply that answer by 100. Top divided by bottom times 100. And we're going to do that every time. So 64 divided by 125 times 100. And when you do that, you get 51.2, and you put a percent sign after that. So, of the people who were surveyed, what's the relative frequency or percent of the people who have pets? 51.2%. Let's try a few more of these. So again, remember, I want to find my part out of my whole, and then I'm going to divide that, multiply by 100. So let's look at B. Of the people who have kids, what's the relative frequency of people who have pets? So what's my part and what is my whole? Well, of the people who have kids, that's going to be my whole. So how many people have kids? 63. Of those 63, how many have pets? Well, let's match up our places here. 41. So 41 out of 63 people have pets. But it asks for the relative frequency, which means percent. So what percent of the people who have kids have pets? Let's do our math. 41, this is what you'll type in your calculator. Top divided by bottom, 41 divided by 63, and we multiply by 100 to get it to a percent. So let's do that. 41 divided by 63 times 100. And when you do that, let's see, it told us to round to the nearest whole number. Which I didn't do in the last one. I'll fix that in just a minute. So you get 65.079 da 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 da. So that's about 65%. So about 65% of the people who have kids had pets. And just to fix what I didn't do earlier, 51.2% rounded to the nearest whole number is 51%. So let's do our next one. Of the people who do not have kids, what's the relative frequency of people who have pets? So watch this. Of the people who do not have kids, how many people don't have kids? 62. What's the relative frequency of people who have pets? So how many of those people who don't have kids have pets? 23. So now that I've got that, I want to change it to the percent. That's what relative frequency means. So I do top divided by bottom, multiply by 100. So let's do that on our calculator. 23 divided by 62 times 100 gives you about 37%. You get 37.0967 da 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 da, but remember, rounding to the nearest whole percent or the nearest whole number just means you want numbers in front of the decimal. So let's try one more time from start to finish. Excuse me. The way you'll be working today. So I'm going to fill in our two-way table using addition, subtraction. So let's do what we can here. Speeding tickets, I can add 41 and 87 to get 128. Next, I notice that I can do my total. I can add 128 and 92 to get an overall total of 220. And that's going to help me fill in some other stuff. Like right here for red vehicle, I have the total. So I can subtract 70 minus 41 is 29. And let's see what else I can fill in. I can use these two numbers to fill in that blank. I have the total, so I'll do 92 minus 29 to get 63. And nice, now I can add those two numbers to finish that column to get the total. 87 plus 63 is 150. So now let's use our two-way table to answer some questions. Remember, relative frequency is the same thing as percent. And on these questions, I like it because they use the word percent. You do those exactly the same way, whether they say percent or relative frequency. So first, let's find our part over whole. Just remind yourself, that's how we set up our fraction. Part of what whole are we talking about? So Of the people surveyed, what percent have received a speeding ticket? So what percent of the people surveyed? So how many people were surveyed? 220. That's our whole. What part of the people surveyed received a speeding ticket? Well, let's see how many received a speeding ticket. Looks like 128 people. So I'm on my way to getting my percent, but I'm not there yet. So now I need to change that fraction to a percent. So I do top divided by bottom, and you multiply by 100 to change it to a percent. So I'm going to do 128 divided by 220 times 100, and you get about 58%. I say about because there are numbers after that 58. I'm just using my calculator, but I'm rounding, okay? Let's do B. Of the people who drive red vehicles, what percent have received a speeding ticket? So let's take a look. Of the people who've received who have red vehicles, so how many people have red vehicles? 70. So out of that 70, how many received a ticket? 41. So that's my part out of my whole. Now I got to change it to a percent. So I do top divided by bottom times 100. Top divided by bottom times 100. That'll work every time to change a fraction to a decimal. So top 41 divided by bottom 70 times 100 is about 59%. So about 59% of the people who drive red vehicles have received a speeding ticket. Last but not least, let's do 2C. Okay. Of the people who do not drive a red vehicle, what percent have received a speeding ticket? So let's set up our fraction, our part out of our whole. So let's find our whole. Of the people who did not drive a red vehicle, so let's see. They either drove a red vehicle or an other color. So how many did not drive a red vehicle? 150. See, I want to use that total. Now it says out of that 150 who do not drive a red vehicle, what percent have received a speeding ticket? So if I look, those who have received a speeding ticket, it's 87 out of that 150. Now let's answer the question, what percent? So I want to do top divided by bottom times 100. So let's see about how much that is. Top, 87, divided by 150 times 100. Oh, that gives me exactly 58%. Exactly 58%. Didn't even have to round that one. So 58% of the people who do not drive a red vehicle have received a speeding ticket. So this, guys, is how we use two-way tables to find what's called the relative frequency or the percentage.